Hello guys, I'm going to be doing the second chapter of Princess Luna's The Uninhabited for you guys. Now, I just watched a video and it severely put me in the mood for this type of story. I'm going to link you guys down. I really recommend that you watch that first. Trust me, it's gonna make the story better. It's Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator speech with some really appropriate background music. So let's begin. The stallion walked narrowly through the group, avoiding the confused glares. The orange filly, now standing alone on the cart, jumped off and headed away from the crowd. A few caught a fleeting glimpse of the orange filly as she vanished from view. The pony departed Voneville without another thought, only determined to get as far from the town as possible. The filly looked back as she reached the limits of her hometown, leaving her old life behind forever. She walked endlessly for hours, aimlessly searching for a safe place. She wandered from small town to small town, each weighed down with a mysterious death. She continued to head west, leaving the borders of Equestria and trekking into the Middle West. After wandering through the entire day, the exhausted filly stopped to rest her hooves on the cool desert ground as she lay down. She began to rest her head when a small figure caught her eye in the distance. She rose back to her hooves and began to walk toward the unknown shape, ignoring her conscience screaming at her for rest. The curious filly began walking faster as the form appeared to glow. As the night darkened, the figure melted with the shady atmosphere. The filly began towards the disappearing outline. She began to sprint, ignoring all sense of need for sleep as she finally lost all view of the shape. After aimlessly running, she struck an invisible wall, knocking her to the ground with a pain-engulfing thud. The filly rolled on the ground in agony as she looked to see what she collided with, but the darkness clouded her vision. She rose to her hooves as she slowly walked forward. She was suddenly stopped by the invisible barrier again, falling across the unknown surface with her hooves. She felt something stick out from the wall, almost like a switch or knob. She felt the bottom of the object and discovered it was a bar lock. The small filly pushed the bar up as it remained in place, straining the force as the bar refused to budge. As her grip began to weaken, the bar shut up as the metal piece grinded against the lock as she fell over. The weakened filly looked at the near invisible door as the bar fell over and bounced on the hinge of the door. The filly stood back up, reached for the lock and pulled it towards her as the large door grinded open, revealing a pitch-black hallway. She nervously walked through the doorway, coming across the staircase as she headed down into the darkness with a burning curiosity. The filly blindly wandered down the endless flight of stairs, each step hoping to be the base of the floor. After what seemed like hours, she finally reached the floor. As she arrived at the entrance of a pitch-black room, massive ceiling lights flashed on, illuminating an endless hallway, each light echoing through the darkness, endless corridor as it was triggered. The lights revealed old and worn walls, peeling gray paint, revealing concrete walls behind it. The atmosphere was almost as an abandoned hospital corridor, lifeless and barren. The filly remained in her place, shocked and confused by the bleak atmosphere of the chamber. With curiosity masking almost all fear, she slowly began walking down the endless hall, her hooves clicking on a thin rubber-coated floor. Each short stop alleviated her nervousness as she paced down the endless hallway. She walked for about 600 yards, the walls almost on a cycle, not a crack different than the one before it. Suddenly, a loud click echoed through the continuous hallway, stopping the filly dead in her tracks. She looked across both sides of the hallway as the clicks grew louder in volume. She squeezed up to the wall to her immediate right, hoping to find large enough space for her to hide, but to no avail. She walked back to the center of the corridor, ready to face the unknown force approaching. The short filly locked her gaze in the direction of the sound as a darkened shadow appeared from afar. The shadow grew closer as the clicks began to grow even louder, the filly replacing her fear with a fighting will. The figure moved into the light, revealing a grizzled young stallion almost 2.5 times the filly's height. The light revealed he was wearing a tattered jacket with a canvas satchel slung over his shoulder. His entire body had been covered in deep scars, several across his face, with one solid white blind eye and one emerald green. A solid black army cap was perched above his shaved head, covering his forehead. A crude, bronze-plated firearm was strapped to his left hoof with a trigger mechanism plate and a tube scope, and a razor-sharp combat knife laced the other with a pressure spring locking the knife in place. The filly did not flinch at the sight of the heavily armed stallion, her rage still clouding her good judgment. The stallion walked closer, now at a slower pace, until he was face to face with the filly, now clenching her teeth. The filly noticed he did not move or speak, calming herself as she remained in her place. The confused stallion took 2 steps back, hoping not to alarm the small filly as she regained her composition. Hoping to relieve the tension, the stallion spoke. "You shouldn't be here, kid." The stallion spoke in a deep, country accent, and his voice echoed through the hallways. "It's not safe down here." The filly remained silent, still skeptical of the stallion, and she looked at the knife on his hoof. "Well," the stallion turned his head, "as long as you're down here, you better stick with me." The lights above flickered with a buzz as the stallion awkwardly awaited the filly's response. "So," the stallion cleared his throat, "more on the quiet side, huh?" The filly nodded, not taking her eyes off the knife. "I'm Ranger, and yours is?" he said as he reached out. The knife on his hoof sprung forward from its lock, placing the point no more than 3 inches from the filly's face. The filly nervously leaned back from his hoof, avoiding the knife. The ranger quickly pulled back his hoof and chuckled with embarrassment. Suddenly, a loud cracking sound ran behind them, echoing in the endless hallway. The alarmed stallion turned around, dropping to his stomach, sticking out his left hoof with his right hoof flanking a button on his wrist into the void in front of him, and placed his left eye behind the scope and closing his right, ready to shoot. Ranger looked to his side to see the filly was still standing. He pulled the orange pony to the floor next to him, refocusing his sight through the glass scope. "You might want to cover your ears, kid," the focused stallion said as he moved his hoof back to the trigger button. "This thing makes a pretty big bang." The door remained silent. Not a sound came after the filly hit the floor. Ranger slowly took his eye off the scope and surveyed the area. After finding nothing, the relieved stallion stood back up, dusting himself off as he looked down at the grounded filly. He nudged his head up, indicating she could rise. The filly rose to her hoofs, slightly irritated but relieved. "Sorry I had to pull your ears down, kid," the focused stallion said as he moved his hoof back to the trigger button. "This thing makes a pretty big bang." And we're going to end it here, guys. This is Princess Luna's The Uninhabited. I will link you guys down to a video you should watch. Well, actually, if you're at this point, it really doesn't make any sense, but if you haven't watched it, there's a video you should watch. It's really good. It's by CHAPLIN. Not by him, but he's in it, and I like it. Also, I'm sorry for the delay of the 100 subscriber thank you video. I've just been waiting so much down to school. I had to take like at least 4 or 5 exams today. Oh, and it's so tiring. I really am exhausted. But I will try to get it out as soon as possible. I'm just trying to find a recording software that'll let me record things because I keep getting problems with that. But it'll be worth it once it finally comes out. And I'm sure it will eventually. I'll see if I can figure something out today. But until then, thank you guys. This has been DJ Pony bringing you a Uninhabited chapter reading. And I will be back as soon as possible with the next one. So, peace out.